Ronald Reagan once said, as government expands, liberty contracts. Keep this in mind as we discuss today what you need and should know and understand about the upcoming digital dollar and how that is going to impact your financial well-being. My name is Dr. David Walaloo.
And my name is Dr. Ross Stewart.
And you are watching Geopolitics in Conflict.
Today we're going to take a deeper dive into the implications of the digital dollar and what it means to you personally. What's going to happen through the Federal Reserve is that the federal government is now going to control your finances. They're going to control your money, and they're going to monitor everything that you spend money on. And that's what our discussion is about today.
Well, that's correct, Ross. That is a very interesting topic that we believe our viewers needs to have a grasp on and needs to understand the ins and outs of what's involved, because it's going to impact everybody in this country. And the reason being because the introduction of this digital dollar, the way it's going to work is that when the United States government, through the Federal Reserve, is going to introduce the Fed coins, if you will, those Fed coins will have a code on them which can track all your spending as to which store you went to, as to what you bought. Basically, the government has an eye on you as to what you are purchasing.
And if actual fiat currency, that's the dollar bills and coins that we currently use, if those things disappear, which is part of the plan, that means everything that everybody spends is going to be recorded and can be scrutinized.
No, that's correct. Well, the government, the U.S. government, that is, the federal government argument is that, well, the United States needs to stimulate the economy. So in other words, when you keep interest rate very low, they're going to print more money because they need to supply money outside and so forth. Yeah, all this is good, but at the same time, an average citizen doesn't understand this lingo, this language that is so complicated. And we are trying here at least to break it down in a simple wording for them to understand what's coming so they can prepare.
Well, one of the things that might disappear, for example, is the income tax. And you say, well, how can that be? Well, the government's going to control all the money. They're going to control the way that money is spent and how much of it there is.
Yeah. Well, this one also, this issue of the introduction of the digital dollar, it's tied to a much bigger picture.
Oh, huge picture.
Yeah. Because the government, it's not coming forward and explaining to American citizens what's involved in all this. As a matter of fact, these negotiations about the digital dollar has been done behind closed doors. Most Americans have no clue about what's coming up in January.
I've even talked to hedge fund managers who don't know it's coming. And they said, really, what is that? They're going, oh, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
When the real money people don't even know it's coming.
What's going on, you know. Well, some of this, based on some Atlas conversations I had with some people overseas, it also ties to the World Economic Forum as to the agenda that is trying to push. Well, usually you hear, just for our viewers to know what I'm talking about here, the World Economic Forum is a gathering of the elite of the world that meet once a year in Switzerland, usually around January or so. And the problem with this World Economic Forum is that it's dictating the terms as to how the global economy should operate. Well, basically what they are looking for is to have a complete control on the global economy.
So what we're probably looking at is the biggest economic shift in the history of humanity. And it's coming right in our near-term future.
Well, actually it is, Ross, because the world geopolitically is moving into a multipolar system. It's not a unipolar system anymore, in other words, in which only one country has a sovereign over the earth.
There's a
Not
lot
anymore.
of power centers around.
Not anymore.
Economic power centers.
Not anymore.
A lot of them.
You're absolutely correct. This is also tied to what China just did a week and a half ago.
Roll out the digital yuan in Xinjiang province.
That is correct. And we did talk about this one in one of our shows. And basically, the West is trying to catch up to China. That train has already left the station. China has already moved forward with it. And the West, including the United States, they are realizing if they don't do something now, they're going to be behind. And this is why now you are hearing a conversation about, through circles in the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, they are talking about the Bretton Woods system too.
Now, Bretton Woods had to do with, it was in 1947, and it had to do with establishing a stable currency that didn't fluctuate that much. And it happened to be the powerhouse of the United States, interesting enough, that selected the dollar.
That's correct, because the dollar, nobody's denying the fact that the dollar still the one of the strongest currencies around the world. However, with what's going on right now, with countries thinking in terms of, we're talking about most countries are considering now how to proceed with this financial changes that's coming up on the global finance. So,
matter of fact, there was just a huge meeting last week, wasn't there?
that is correct. And actually, it was during that meeting of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, where the discussion was made regarding the introduction of the digital currency. And this is why the Federal Reserve of the United States, in addition to the one in Britain, Central Bank of England, the Central Bank of Japan, the European Union Bank, all of them talked about the possibility of rolling out this digital currency very, very soon.
We might take just a minute and talk about the implications of this to the individual American.
Well, that will be a very, very major impact. Can you imagine the government's tracking all your transactions? You go to grocery store to buy whatever, and the government knows that you bought A, B, C, and D. Who gives the government that kind of power to track everything you are doing? And since when the government acquired that kind of power?
Well, they're using these kind of justifications. People will no longer be able to buy drugs illegally.
Oh, that's nonsense. That's nonsense, because with this control the government will have, they're going to go far beyond what you can even imagine. As a matter of fact, with this, they're going to now not only track your transactions, but also to be able, the government, will be able to prevent you from purchasing something or even owning something.
Or they'll only allow you to purchase from particular places that are on their favorite list.
Well, because those digital currencies will be coded. So can you imagine this? If the Feds will release, let's say, 10,000 Fed coins, okay, and all of them coded a certain way, and you go to a store, whatever, and that store doesn't take that particular Fed coin because it's not coded.
The government doesn't allow it.
Exactly.
And so the amount of control that the government has is unprecedented in history.
Yeah, and this is why some people have been arguing that, are we moving into a different system of governance here? Something you used to hear about in the East, in Europe, for example, Eastern European countries back during communism and so forth. All the government resources were in the control of the government.
And so all of a sudden spending becomes a political event, and who's in power at the time? It could be something like this. Here's a person who's in the favored category, whatever that means, the political jargon of the day, and the favored category cannot afford this mortgage, they can't possibly pay it. But they're in the favored category, so they get a $175,000 mortgage. And they can't make the payments. And so what happens? I knew somebody in San Antonio in about 1995. And I was in an in-depth conversation with him. He was Hispanic, and the government had just put out a special program to make sure that Hispanic people could get homes. And so they offered him like $520 a month for the first 3 years. Then it was going to go to $1,000 a month.
Double.
When I talked to him, it was at the end of the first period. And he said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've got 3 years in this house, I've got this amount of money in it, and I cannot make the payments. What do you think happened?
Well, in this, he lost the house.
He lost the house.
And his credit probably been ruined.
Oh, and his credit was ruined.
Yeah.
And he said, and I'm in a situation with a lot of my friends. So this is a government policy. How is this digital dollar and such control of the economy going to fare when politics plays the role in who gets the loan, whether they can afford it or not? I mean, this is just a small implication of this. We also see that 1/3 of the American economy, according to some recent government research that I saw, is cash. They, not that they're trying to hide anything, but maybe they are. Maybe it's drugs, maybe they just don't want to pay taxes. Maybe it's a whole community who buys from this store cash, and then the store doesn't report the income.
Wow.
1/3 of the economy is that. You go, that's staggering. Now what's going to happen there? I don't have any idea, but I think that there's going to be a major change there.
Yeah.
Unpredictable what it's going to be, though.
And certainly this will favor only the well-connected, the businesses that are well-connected, politically speaking.
Oh, is that a can of worms to dig into?
I know.
What we see is every time there's an economic change, that you could call them the elite, or you could say, these are the people that hold the reins. They have the power. They have the money. Who benefits most? That group does.
Yeah. Well, this is where that World Economic Forum in Switzerland is pushing for, because they're pushing for what they call the fourth industrial revolution, and under which it's literally they're saying that you shouldn't own anything and you will be happy.
Thank you for deciding for me.
For me, yeah. Basically, I'm going to turn my life over to you for you to decide for me. And this is where the concern, at least with what the government here in the United States is thinking with this launching of the digital dollar, is going to lead to. This is where the concern. There's one more thing I need to mention, Ross. Since you are into psychology, you understand the human psychology. What will be the psychological impact, in your opinion, on this?
Well, there's going to be three things. One's going to be those who are addicted to power and control and money are going to get more power, more control, and more money. Okay? Then there's that group of people who says, well, I'm going to be taken care of. The government is going to take care of me. At long last, I'll be taken care of. The quality. Then there's the group who says, I don't want someone to take care of me. This is control. I don't want it. And I'm looking more and more at the guillotine in the French Revolution.
Well, it certainly looks to go in that direction. I mean, you already start to hear stories in the United States that certain, like what happened yesterday in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
When 1,000 people just stormed into some businesses, and it was like some anarchy going on.
And so what we see is that we're not surprised. We've seen almost an entire year to this point of that kind of activity.
Well,
you take a look at Seattle. What a fiasco that was.
Yeah. Well, funny you mentioned that one, Russ, because there is a conversation now in Seattle about the northeast of the United States. Seattle, Oregon, and California might be thinking about seceding from the Union altogether, which, I'm not surprised at the conversation in itself, because it will be other parts in the United States that will want the same. I mean, including Texas, for the sake. But the big picture to all this is, are we kind of on path for some major, we can use the term civil war here. French Revolution, when it happened, it wasn't about just the government, but it was about that inequality that got so wide between the have and the have-nots. The Bolshevik revolutions in Russia, it was not only about the government policies, but also because how much people were fed up with this nonsense from the government.
If the current population of the United States is somewhere around 330 million, and we're looking at 90 million disempowered, virtually poor people who do you think is breaking into these malls? The disenfranchised and the powerless. And the current system is dedicated to keeping them in their place.
Wow.
While the rich get richer and more powerful.
Yeah, and that is very, very problematic. So this introduction of these digital dollars, it's just going to have a major impact financially and psychologically.
So the bottom line here is what we're seeing is it's irreversible, It's inevitable. The digital dollar is on its way.
Yeah.
And it's going,
Well, usually I was going to just say, we're just presenting information to people here to make up their own decisions. We don't make decisions for anybody here. We're just providing the facts, providing the information, and we let the viewers decide for themselves.
absolutely right. It's inevitable. It's coming.
Well, as always, stay informed. Until next time.